Wanted to welcome everybody, and I'll turn this into a speaker view, I guess, is maybe the best way. Welcome to Odetta, everyone, and Odetta Petite, and welcome Andra Samelson, our solo artist for this exhibition, Pemarom and Pemarom Petite. Um, I've had the real pleasure of working with Andra numerous times over the years, showing her work both in Chelsea and on First Dibs. And we've been in discussion about her work and the piece Pemarom for about 5 years now. The pandemic altered how I wanted to run physical space, and I created Odetta Petite with the help of a sculptor, Seth Callender. So I'm going to start by just tilting my camera on my computer and showing you what I've got here in my apartment. If you're just entering, please mute yourself. So, Andra is an accomplished artist. Her work is represented in multiple collections. Most notably, though, she had two works acquired by the 9/11 Museum in New York for their permanent collection. And this particular work, in its full scale, is also a part of the permanent collection at the Loyola Museum of Art in Chicago. And we have a guest here that actually saw Andra's exhibition in Chicago in 2013. So, Anne, we hope you'll speak up when we're open to Q&A. So what we're going to do, Andra is going to present this piece and a little bit about Pemarom. It's a term that means lotus and reflected light. And I want you guys to start to just think about reflections upon reflections upon reflections, and how deep that meditation can go in all aspects of our lives. And this idea of light and the color spontaneously emitting from reflected light and creating rainbows is a message of peace for me. I'm very happy to have this chance to have Pemarom at Odetta at this time. It feels like you couldn't have asked for a better concept as a gallerist in this moment. So think about rainbows. We're going to do some interactive discussion about rainbows in the question and answer at the end of Andra's talk. What we'll be looking for is some of your accounts of rainbows, how you may have chased them or been surrounded by them at some point that felt significant to you or is just a pleasurable, playful memory. Um, so Andra is, Pemarom Petite is on view virtually. And if you have a serious inquiry about the work of art, you're welcome to make an appointment with me to come see it. Um, it will be on view virtually into perpetuity, but in physical space until the summer solstice, June 22nd. And we opened the show with a new moon back in March, March 2nd. And today is also a period of a full moon. So we're kind of excited by our lunar events and celestial dates as well. We've got a few people still coming in. So I'd like to welcome Andra and just begin.
Thank you so much, Ellen. And thank you everyone for coming. I see people from all parts of my and all years of my life. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to have created Pemarom Petite at Odetta Petite. And I would like to really start by talking about the work Pemarom that Pemarom Petite is a model for. I'll start by sharing the screen. Let's see here. Can you, are you seeing it?
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm not.
We're seeing your whole screen, not one.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Oh,
There we
there
go.
we are.
How are we good now?
Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Successful.
And
All right.
Andra, I'm just going to cut in for 1 second. If you have a question, anyone, please put it into the chat. There we go. Sorry about that.
So I had a wonderful, another wonderful opportunity that was given to me in 2013. I was invited by the Loyola University Museum of Art to have a large solo exhibition there, which was entitled Cosmologies. And they gave me a huge room, a couple of rooms, in fact, and the biggest room was 40 by 40 feet. And I decided to do a number of things in that room, and I wanted to have a couple of floor installations. And one of them, I wanted to have a huge lotus, but I didn't know what materials that I wanted to use yet. And I happened to be upstate New York, where I live part of the year. And I walked into my bedroom, and there was a little table by the window, and there was a CD just by chance on the table. And the sunlight was shining on it, and it projected these incredible rainbows on the wall. And eureka, I knew then that I wanted to make the petals of Pemarom out of CDs.
Great.
So here is Pemarom in the museum. And as you can see, it was lit in such a way that rainbows are projected on the adjacent walls. And now you can't see it here, they're also on the ceiling. Now in the corner, you can see a little black box, and that is a speaker. And this work was accompanied by an audio tape recording of the mantra of compassion, Om Mani Padme Hum. Now, this mantra is very meaningful and very complex. There have been many books written about this mantra. It has an inner meaning, a subtle meaning, a secret meaning. But the outer meaning is, behold the jewel in the center of the lotus. As Ellen mentioned, the meaning of Pema in Tibetan is lotus and is a symbol of purity. The lotus is rooted in and grows from the mud, through the water, up into the vast sky, but it is unstained. Just like our mind is capable of transcending the murkiness and darkness of our suffering. There is a recording, a couple minutes of and a video that has this recitation of the mantra on on Odeta's website, if you wish to look at it. So when the viewers walked around Pemarom, the colors were constantly changing. And I'm very interested in working with reflective materials in my work, and have been doing so for many, many years. In the year 2000, I created a 25-foot rendering of the night sky for a 100-acre sculpture park in upstate New York. The work was called Ephemeris, and all of the stars were made of reflective acetate domes and mirrors that reflected the actual sky, the clouds going by, all the surroundings, and the people observing it. This work was later recreated at the University of Virginia and on view there for 2 years. One of the reasons that I'm so interested in working with reflective materials is that you become part of the piece as you're observing it, and everything becomes part of the piece. So that because things are constantly changing and moving, it's a reminder that we really only have this present moment. Another work that I included in my exhibition Cosmologies was called Kunkyab. And Kunkyab in Tibetan means all encompassing. And this work again reflected everything that was going on. In fact, it reflected the entire exhibition and the people observing it. But back to Pemarom, here's a close-up of some of the colors that, as I said, were constantly changing as the viewer moved around it. And here's a picture of my actually creating it in the museum. I had this wonderful surprise happen when I was mocking it up in my studio. I realized that if I reversed the direction of each of the rings, it created this illusion of a three-dimensional object. And of course it isn't, it's a two-dimensional object that's entirely flat. But as you walked around it, you almost looked like you were going to fall into it. And it also created this wonderful spiral.
Wow, that's great.
So here is Pemarom Petite, which was made with iridescent paper petals. And just like in Pemarom, it was lit in such a way that you can see rainbows on all the walls of Odetta Petite. And when seen at different angles, the colors change. Ellen actually asked me about my approach to color in this piece. And I am also a painter, and when I use colors in my paintings, they are dictated by an intuitive choice and are sealed in their fixed pigments. But happily, with Pemarom and Pemarom Petite, the colors are already made and are constantly changing this wonderful magical dance of ephemeral iridescence. So while I had all these CDs on the floor of my studio, I started playing around with them, and I made some other installations and sculptures with them. Here's one called La Fleur Nocturnelle. It's about 8 feet. Here is one called Constellated, dimensions variable, kept expanding. One of the most magical things that happened while I was working with these CDs on my studio floor is that the light, including my floodlights or the sunlight that would shine in for a few moments every morning, would create these amazing rainbows on my ceiling. And it's like I couldn't wait in the morning to get in my studio to see what rainbows there were. I love the juxtaposition of this ethereal light with this kind of funky peeling ceiling of my studio, in my studio with the pipes and the sprinkler heads. So not only did the light create these projections of pure color, but they also hit the CDs in such a way that they made these wonderful luminous white shapes of different kinds of shapes. And around a lot of these shapes was a kind of aura of rainbow light. Here's one directly on a work wall. And here's one, I don't know how that happened, but you can actually see the CDs kind of, ascending into this rainbow light. So around this time I was working in this way, I came into my apartment and I went into the elevator, and on the elevator wall, someone had put a sheet of reflective mylar to patch a curtain there. And it was lit by the elevator light in such a beautiful way that I immediately took a picture. and decided that I wanted to start working with this Mylar and to create other images of this reflective light. So I went out and got a big roll at Canal Plastics of this reflective Mylar. And I created a little studio slash theater right outside my window. I don't get a lot of light in my studio, unfortunately, but I do have a small window, pun intended, of light through my window for about 40 minutes every morning. So here's the little theater I created, and I put a piece of white foam core there. And as I moved this Mylar, it created these just marvelous images. I don't quite know why these little white wispy things were, how that happened, but there were a lot of those in the images, and I kind of think of them as clouds.
Oh, wow.
So I have created a portfolio of archival pigment prints out of some of these images on both paper and canvas. Here's an example of one on canvas in a collection in Munich. So after I got quite a lot of a number of images, and I decided it would be fun to maybe combine them and maybe make a video. I was thinking in this way. And at the time, I was in touch with a friend who is here today, David Hikes. David is an incredible musician. He is a visionary composer and singer and teacher of contemplative music and meditation. He is the founder of contemplative music called Harmonic Chant and of the Harmonic Presence work, which blends music, meditation training, and healing harmonization practices. David and I felt there was something similar in the kinds of music that he was creating and sounds with some of the images of my reflective rainbow light. So we tossed around some ideas about possibly collaborating together. David has performances all over the world. And so we talked about the possibility of, during one of his performances, these images of rainbow light would be projected all around him. And I would, with the help of a wonderful editor friend, created a demo, a very short demo that I wanted to share with you called In the Light. So this actually can be seen on Odeta's website, as well as a link to David's website, if you would like to see it again. So as you see, I am very interested in rainbow light, and someone had actually asked me what it meant to me. And well, I think that because it can appear suddenly anywhere at any time, simultaneously in different places and spontaneously, it represents omniscience to me. And because it can vanish instantly, it represents impermanence and our fragility. I think too, you know, if you try to chase a rainbow, you can't. And you can't catch it. You can chase it, but you can't catch it. And you can't really catch anything. So I guess a rainbow also epitomizes or symbolizes and represents the basic fact of our existence, that we really cannot catch anything as our lives swiftly unfold and pass away. It's funny because we think of rainbows as illusory, but we often don't consider that our lives here are also illusory. So as I think I mentioned, or maybe Ellen mentioned, I live upstate for half the year. And whenever there's a rain shower or a storm followed by a sunny sky, I immediately rush outside to see the rainbow. And I've even been known to jump in my car and chase the rainbow to see it in its full glory. I think all of us have this same delight and eagerness to see a rainbow. And for me, at least, it's like we're often so entrenched in the heaviness of our daily lives and the constraints, the heavy constraints and challenges and that we all have, that seeing a rainbow, and just temporarily at least, frees us from that and connects us to the sky and these magical ever-changing colors arcing across it for a moment, and its ephemeral beauty. And seeing a rainbow makes us feel a little lighter, I think, and a little freer. So I know we're going to open things up in a bit, and you can talk about your own experiences with this lightness and these rainbows. But I just wanted to tell a short story about something that happened to me a few years ago. I was at an artist colony in northern Massachusetts, and it was in the late fall. And I was taking a walk with one of the other residents. It was very late at night. And suddenly we turned the corner, and there were these huge white and green beams of light coming from the horizon. And it was just magnificent. And it was my first and only sighting of the aurora borealis. So my companion said to me, you know, when our ancestors saw these lights for the first time, they were down on their knees, and they just, you know, they assumed that it was a display from the gods. But of course, we know now, science teaches us that it's just, you know, an interaction between the solar wind and the Earth's magnetic field. And, you know, he said rather smugly. And of course, with my jaw still dropped, I said, well, I am still down on my knees. And I think it is the most appropriate response to this luminous spectacle. I think in a way it's actually the same way with the rainbow when we see a rainbow, because in the natural world, when we see a rainbow, it is just caused by the refraction and dispersion of the sun's light rays on rain or other water droplets in the atmosphere. But it doesn't stop us from experiencing this awe and appreciation of its spectacular beauty. And in closing, I wanted to tell another little story about a time that I had just graduated college and come to New York City to live. And I was walking down Fifth Avenue. It was a beautiful spring day. And people were hurrying around, bustling, rushing on Fifth Avenue. And the sky was beautiful. It was, brilliant sun, little wispy clouds. So I stopped and I looked up at the sky. And while I was looking up at the sky, someone tapped me on the shoulder. And I looked, and it was a very, very old man who said, in all the years I have lived in Manhattan, I have never seen anyone look up at the sky, particularly on Fifth Avenue. And this makes me very happy. Well, there's more. So we started chatting and walking down Fifth Avenue, and I told him I was just out of college and I was really looking for a job. And he said, wow, well, my son owns a film distribution company and they're looking for a secretary. So to make a very long story short, including the fact that I was completely unqualified to be a secretary, I got the job. It was my very first job in New York. And punchline, the production company was called Rainbow Productions. Incredible synchronicity. So on that note, I will close my talk, wishing that you all look up at the sky. I think is there a movie that don't look up at the sky or something? I'm saying look up at the sky, because you never know what will happen. You never know what you will see, and it might be a rainbow.
Thank you so much, Andra. That was a great talk. You're welcome to unmute yourselves now. And just wanted to say a little bit more about Odetta Petite. Excuse me, let me put on speaker view so you can see this again. And then we'll open it up to our Q&A and rainbow reflections, haha. This is Odetta Petite. This gallery is designed to present artwork at a model scale that can be built up into the actual scale that would fit in my original Odetta Gallery space. Pemarom Petite represents the large-scale Pemarom, which is available in an edition of 5. Loyola Museum of Art purchased the first one. I'm offering them through Odetta on First Dibs, and this work of art is designed in this model form to represent the fact that Andra is capable of creating this in full scale. If you're an artist and a sculptor and you want to offer a proposal to me for a large scale sculpture or installation, you must be willing to come and put it in a smaller model scale form in Odetta Petite. This hybrid space is about both in real life and virtual life, with the idea in mind that designers and architects have an opportunity, and curators, to see large-scale sculpture in New York City and propose it for their own spaces. So that is my spiel on Odetta Petite. It's been a fun journey and one that continues to flourish and expand. So I'm open to proposals. So now, if you have questions, feel free to ask Andra, or if you have a rainbow account, feel free to tell us all about it.
Well, I remember being just out of college, I think, and driving in Boston through the city. And I was around Symphony Space. I was really downtown. And all of a sudden, I saw through my windshield, I looked up and there's this unbelievable rainbow, incredible rainbow. And I just spontaneously the windows were open on the car. And I spontaneously like yelled out the window, telling people, look up, look up. And there was a guy crossing the street right in front of me. And he looked up, he looked, he was like, wow, so it was kind of nice. It was I don't know why I've always remembered that. I mean, it was just an amazing, I think when you see a rainbow, it's like a gift, and it's like these other instances, like you were talking about the Northern Lights, which your film reminded me of actually before you mentioned that, Aurora Borealis. But, I remember my father, and then I'll be quiet and let somebody else talk, but my father, a few days before he died, he was in a wheelchair and I took him out and we were looking around and there were these incredible clouds, beautiful clouds in the sky, beautiful blue sky. And he looked up and he said, angel's wings. And he was not a religious man, and it's not like he suddenly became religious on his deathbed, but I think that it's the same impulse. It's that impulse of he was a scientist actually, and the mystery is there whether you're a religious person or not. It's you appreciate this incredible beauty of the universe, and it's like a gift whenever you experience something like that. So I relate to your work. Okay. It's beautiful.
It really is a gift, isn't it, to see a rainbow? And sometimes they're double rainbows, and sometimes they're rainbows that are in circles.
I just wanted to say that I was one of the lucky ones who actually got to see the full-scale installation at Loyola, and just unbelievable synchronicity even in today's call, because I'm in the process of writing a book about my journey from the mainstream to the mystical. And I was in Chicago downtown in September of 2013. I was walking along Michigan Avenue from my hotel to get a cup of coffee. And as I was coming back, I saw the banner hanging outside of Loyola that had these circles on it and the word cosmologies. And I had been coming to downtown Chicago since I was a young girl, and I had never known that there was a museum in that space. It was 8 o'clock in the morning and the museum wasn't open. So I went back to my hotel, made a bunch of calls, changed my schedule, and I was the first person in the door at 10 o'clock when the museum opened. There was no one there for the entire time I was in the installations and looking around at all the stuff, and jaw-dropping. I have had many transcendent experiences. I have been to the Louvre, the Uffizi, every well-known marquee gallery. Something happened in that space that day while I was alone that was unforgettable. And the book that I'm writing right now is about how I came to own that painting right there when I was moving from my traditional work in supply chain consulting, where I had owned a company for 20 some years, into healing and intuitive work. And there was this one spot on my gray wall at my office that I wanted to put something on, and I still had the catalog, and I tracked down Andra and ended up buying that. And until the pandemic, it was in my my first treatment office. So thank you, Andra.
Thank you, Anne, so much. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you for coming today. And thank you for, I'm sorry we weren't at the exhibition together. That would have been fun.
You were definitely there in spirit, as were as were a lot of other spirits. So thank you. And I feel it's funny to see the pictures of Pemarom, because it's like I can't write words that will ever describe what that experience was like. I mean, just anyway, namaste. Thank you.
Again, for anyone who's just come on to our talk, we're in our Q&A part of the presentation, and we're sharing anecdotal stories about our rainbow experiences, and as well as asking questions for Andra about Pemarom Petite, and also Odetta Petite.
I had a question, a technical question, I think, to Andra. in your studio, they were all pearly whitish. How come they weren't black and reflective color in your studio like the other one?
Wait, could you say that again? I didn't quite understand the.
Okay, the reflections in the CDs in your studio were all pearly white, right?
You mean when they reflected on the wall?
Yeah,
Yes.
and the ones that reflected in your installation they were colored. They were black and
Well, in the installation, they weren't black. They were in the installations that I've done, both Pemarom Petite and Pemarom, they were just the clear rainbow light. None of those kind of strange forms appeared. And it has to do with the way it's lit. I know when Pemarom was installed, they really spent a long time trying to light it correctly. And they did it so that it was just displaying the rainbow, the pure rainbow light.
thanks.
As with so many things, it really is activated by light. For example, here we even get some reflected halos of color, even on my wall behind the piece. But this piece is, when the light is off, Andra provided this lamp. When the light is off, then you don't see any rainbows. So they're purely constructed by the light that's focused on them. You're welcome to unmute yourselves and join in this discussion on rainbows. One conversation that I wanted to talk about is our childlike wonder when chasing a rainbow or trying to see the whole rainbow. And in my feeling, when I'm chasing a rainbow, what I'm really chasing is to get there and get surrounded by color and completely immersed in color. And it's impossible, but I'll never stop that desire to have that experience of color. And for me, it's just so interesting that some of the most magical experiences that we have in our lives are illusory, hard to define. Certainly you can't pay money to have them. They're free. And it's that aspect that I find so important in this time is that we've all had a quieter space oftentimes, even though it's been chaotic, to really think deeper about those aspects in our lives that no money could ever buy. How do we fulfill ourselves even during lockdown? So I again feel with this war breaking out, everything that Andra's message of Pemarom and behold the jewel in the center of the lotus. I'm going to be pondering that comment, that phrase for a while now. And thank you for describing that for us, Andra.
So, first of all, thank you so much, Andra, for your presentation. It was really amazing. And I do want to say, Ellen, that there is an experience of color immersion that one can have if you look up the work of Sanford Wormfeld. Sanford Wormfeld was a professor at Hunter College who created something called the cyclorama. And it was an immersive color ellipse, three-dimensional, and it has not been exhibited too much because it's such a huge installation and construction. But check it out. That's what his goal was, and I think he achieved it. So my question to Andra was, do you, in your heart or soul, distinguish between the color that's created by artificial plastic sources, like the CDs, and the the light that we see as the northern lights or the rainbow. Is that something that I notice there's a blending kind of back and forth with the light, if it's artificial or natural. And I'm just wondering how you respond to that idea.
Well, I think as artists, we often use, artificial things. We use plastic pigment, acrylics, and to connect with these other realities that are natural. So that would be my answer.
Hi. I wanted to say I'm also a rainbow chaser. I have almost an obsession with rainbows, and I think that my experiences when I look into the sky and see a rainbow, everything kind of stops, and I'm just in awe, and my thoughts kind of stop, and I feel like receiving like a blessing, like a gift, like has been mentioned. And while watching the slideshow, this kind of addresses the previous question. I just noticed, like, suddenly I became aware that I was so relaxed and so calm, and I wasn't thinking about anything. I was just absorbed in the images. And I think that the rainbow that Andra has sort of, offered through her work does have the power of the rainbow in the sky. It really, really calmed my heart and my mind just being with it. And so thank you.
Thank you, Adina, for those nice words. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. I'm not a real tiger. It just says Jeff's a tiger. I don't know why. But I'm just a guy from the east side of Detroit. But I've known Andra since the late 70s or something like that. And my experience, I haven't seen that many rainbows because we didn't have a lot in Detroit. But when my daughter was 4 or 5, the only way I can get her to go to sleep was to sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow from The Wizard of Oz. So every night, there was the rainbow thing. And it was such a wonderful song. I'm sure you all have heard it a gazillion times, so I'm not going to try to sing it. But the idea of that there's this space over the rainbow that you can try to get to, but really you can't. And only the birds can get there, and maybe even they can't. It's just a wonderful association with rainbows, and with young kids who who are obsessed with the Wizard of Oz and the various messages of it, particularly that. So that's my rainbow thing. More sound than visual.
And does your daughter still remember those
Yeah.
songs?
Oh yeah. Yeah, she claims to be one of the world's leading experts on the Wizard of Oz. There's a Wizard of Oz trivia game that you can buy, and I wouldn't recommend anybody playing it, but it's out there.
Well, I can tell a story. I live in the Northwest, and it rains a lot out here. And there are lots of rainbows and lots of clouds, but I would go hiking in the mountains nearby on, say, this side of Mount Hood and into the gorge. And we would go very early in the morning. And, when the birds were just starting and there was no one else around, and we would get up on a ridge. And as often happens, the clouds hang low around here, and then they burn up from below. So they'll start rising, and you can walk into them and you feel like you're in molecules because you're in these clouds, and the sun comes out and it reflects like rainbows in all of those little molecules.
Wow.
and you feel like you're in it. And
Wow.
if it rains and all the rain is hanging in things around in the trees, then it reflects on those little raindrops and also makes color. So
How extraordinary. I want to go there.
Can you capture it in a photographic image?
no,
No, it's
no, I
hard.
couldn't.
That's
And
the thing, you have
honestly,
I say though that Paula Overbay's work, her artwork feels like that when you look at her drawings and paintings. Sorry, Paula, I
No.
didn't mean to interrupt you.
yeah, well, that is an ignition, of art. Yeah.
I
It's
think the
nice
place
to
where
know
I,
that
I'm
source.
sorry.
It's nice to know that source, Paula. I've loved your work
Mhm.
over the years, so this is really great. I'm sorry, Andra.
No, I was just remembering now, I think the place where I saw the most abundance of rainbows was Hawaii. And in Hawaii, it was in the summer, and it was kind of, you know how like a baby cries and then smiles, cries, smiles, cries, smiles, cries, smile. It was kind of like that, the sun would come out, it would rain, sun, rain, rainbow, 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 sun, rain, rainbow. There were rainbows all day long. And we even drove through a rainbow on the road, which was a highlight. There was no, gold to catch. There was not a pot of gold.
What's on the other side?
Yes,
What's
exactly.
on the other side?
But where do you think that comes from, that story about the pot of gold? Isn't that Irish? Is it? Is it
Yes.
an
I
Irish
think so,
tale?
yeah.
That's the also the song Finian's Rainbow. And if you ever want to follow some James Joyce, read Finnegan's Wake, and you will be surrounded in rainbows and coded language to do with how color symbolizes meaning. So when you think about rainbows, you can also think about light and freedom, and it becomes a symbol of that quest for independence. Well, any other anecdotes before we wrap up? This has been really nice, everyone. One more? Yeah,
I guess
David.
I'll volunteer. So we have a retreat center here in central France, a couple hours from southwest of Paris near the Loire. And we had a winter retreat here one year. And we were in a morning meditation session, which I was accompanying. We'd say guided meditation, just accompanying. And at some point, I just had a flash that we should all go outside and there would be a rainbow. And I thought, and then I had a whole inner debate, like, well, what if there's no rainbow and we all go outside, and I kind of broke the meditation and everything. So I had a should I, shouldn't I kind of moment, which lasted for a while. And I just thought, okay, well, so I, I said, if we could just have a pause, I'd like to could we all go outside for a minute? There might be a surprise. And there was a rainbow outside. So I thought, wow, okay, well, we are connected to that realm, intuitively in some ways. So I have a photograph of that if I can, can I do a screen share? I guess I could maybe. Let's see.
I think I have multiple
David has incredible photos of the sky. I love looking at them. Oh, wow.
Whoa.
Well, I shouldn't, it's a very, there's a better photo. It's just all of us looking at the rainbow. So anyway, somebody took this one. So this is like hunting the rainbow, and you're the hunter, and then you get the photograph. So that wasn't my point at all about it. That was not, but then there were a couple other very, I was driving near here back. I dropped some people off at the train station. Can you see it okay?
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Okay. So it was summer, it was dusty, they'd been harvesting, and my windshield was not very clean, I confess. So anyway, I'm driving by I think they were fields had been sunflower seeds, or sunflowers. So anyway, I was completely amazed by what was happening with the light, just the sort of late afternoon sun. And I took this photograph in a big hurry with a very cheap, cell phone through the windshield. But anyway, there's another, just a little rainbow moment. And then I don't know if am I taking too long to do this?
No, it's
I have
just,
only-
please, this is gorgeous.
Good.
Okay. So yeah, so in 30 seconds or less, I got very interested. I moved to New York in 1974 as a filmmaker, experimental filmmaker. And I got very interested in the relationship between light spectrum, color spectrum, and sound spectrum. And what would be prismatic sound was kind of my what I was looking for on on the other side of the rainbow, I guess. So I started working with harmonics of sound, especially harmonics of voice. And the first track on my first album, called Hearing Solar Winds, is called Rainbow Voice. And it's on Spotify. It's part of an album length journey called Hearing Solar Winds. And anyway, a more recent album I did was called Rainbow Dances. And I was listening to the master mix. I was flying over the Dolomites to attend an event or give an event, I forget. And I looked down and there were these, it's called irisation. It's basically rainbows in clouds below, and which you can see from above only. And this, I had to, rework it. I had to find a photo of it. This wasn't, unfortunately, I didn't have a camera when I was flying over, but I was listening to this sound, and I had never seen rainbows from above. So I thought that was really incredible. You can see amazing photographs of that. Again, it's called irisation, like iris and then ATION.
Huh, look at that, how extraordinary.
But these are just moments of offerings, Andra, to you for this amazing journey that you shared with us today. Really very special.
Thank you, David. And I'm so glad I could include your music, a little excerpt of it. And thank you for those amazing images. My goodness. I wanted to just say something. Maybe some of you who know more about this, I was talking briefly to Ellen the other day about it. I know that in terms of color, that there are different rules about color that differ if you mix colored light, for example, or colored pigment. Now, we all know that if you mix blue and yellow pigment, you get a green pigment. But that is not true about light. You might mix yellow and blue light and you don't necessarily get a green light. But I don't know the specifics. And if anyone else does here, it would be interesting to learn. Nobody does, okay.
Just a quick observation from your beautiful, the reflections coming off your images and then making these kind of streaks, like almost like drawings of white light. That's the colors coming back together. I think you were saying, wow, it looks like clouds, or, I don't know where that came from. I think that's from the colors deprismatizing, so to say, and coming back. And in the focal points between those different reflective places, those are those streaks of white light turning back into white light, the rainbow color.
Well, thank you. That's good to know.
David, if your residency is still going, would you please type in the name of the residency and a web address, if you don't mind, into the chat?
Yeah, of
We've got
course.
a question about that.
Okay. So it's well, I don't know. I should just give you I guess the address and my, email or something, that I can send stuff. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
And as I mentioned before, if you would like to look at David's website, it is on Odetta Gallery's website.
Totally obsolete, late 20th century quality website at best, sort of, prototypical.
It's very hard to keep up. and then focus on your art too. So
Right.
yeah. Well, I think we're winding down now. Andra, thank you again for your vision, your concept, and the execution of it. It's just such a pleasure always working with you. I've always enjoyed learning more and more. Thank you everyone for coming. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at odettagallery@gmail.com. And happy to answer any questions that you have. And David, thank you for joining us from France. It was a pleasure to get introduced to your artwork and your sound work and your total projects that you're working on. So what a beautiful
very much.
collaboration.
I was very happy to be part of this, and it was a thrill to work with Andra on in connection with her work. It was really, really beautiful. And what she came up with, I think, is just quite magical.
And, thank you to Jane Zip, who is here, because she's the one who put the demo video together.
Oh, thank you, Jane. That's never an easy task. So I'm
Thank you,
going
Jane.
to stop the recording unless there's any more information anyone would like to share before I stop recording. Okay. Thank you all so much. Keep working hard at immersing yourselves in color.
And look at the sky.
Wait, I don't mean to leave the meeting. I meant
Thanks,
to.
Andra.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I
Thank
meant
you.
to stop recording. Gosh, gotta go back.
Merci beaucoup. Bye.
Okay, I guess
Thank
here's the ending there.